This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
You're listening to the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. And now, here's your host, Lisa Rangel.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the 27th episode of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. I'm Lisa Rangel, host of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast and founder of Chameleon Resumes. We are an executive resume writing and LinkedIn profile development and job search consultancy firm. We work with executives, high potential leaders. We help them land their next position faster. And on today's podcast, we're going to share with you 4 tips on how to nail that tell me about yourself question, that elusive question that everybody hates to get asked, but they get asked. Inexperienced recruiters depend on this interview question because it shifts the chat to the candidate so they don't have to say much. And experienced interviewers use this question to try to make the interviewee uncomfortable because if they're unprepared, they're going to stumble and it gives the interviewer an upper hand. So after today's session, you will have a framework in which to nail this question. So no matter who's asking you for whatever reason and their motivation is, you will have this confidence builder because you have this down pat. So no matter what level you're at in your career, you're going to want to do this, and I'm glad you're here. So it doesn't really matter how far you've climbed up the ladder. Everyone hates to be asked this interview question. So tell me about yourself. Everyone gets asked. Again, it comes back to having to be ready. So how a candidate reacts and answers this simple question can be extremely telling of a candidate's viability for an executive role. So it's important that you're prepared and you practice and you bring your A game to this challenge. While this popular interviewing question does pose a lot of landmines, you can avoid them by following these 4 tips. So first, you want to focus your story on what makes you exceptional. The key here is to be specific when describing what achievements and strengths you bring to the table. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Oftentimes, interviewees, candidates are wanting to impress people. So they tend to be this people-pleasing, always catering, and they don't take a stand and they don't tell specific stories. And this can be specifically or especially true if a big job is on the line. This can lead to one big landmine, trying to be everything to everyone. This is when you particularly need to demonstrate what makes you different than other candidates. You can do so by focusing on the strengths, on the skills that make you unique and that make you exceptional. Focus on the stories that showcase your strengths and allow you to provide concrete examples of these strengths and results and desirable traits. For instance, if you were vying, say, for a VP position in really any discipline, this would be a great time to mention steady promotions that led you to this being ready to this next role. Your ability to attract and cultivate talent, your knack for conserving costs and utilizing resources effectively, and your ability to satisfy business stakeholders. These are all traits that you want to demonstrate in the stories that you're telling about yourself. Promote yourself, but do it subtly with concrete, specific stories. Next, you want to be confident in your ability to serve that prospective company, but you don't want to get cocky. There's a fine line between confidence and conceit. You can feel it most of the time when you've crossed it. But one way to think of it is like this. Confidence acknowledges what you're really good at, but your focus still remains on service to the organization, service to your prior organizations. Conceit, on the other hand, thinks it can do no wrong, and it has a more self-interested, narcissistic tone. For instance, if a recruiter hears from a marketing candidate, I can market anything, and that person is in the running for, say, an SVP of marketing type of position, the recruiter is probably most likely not going to believe the candidate because it's just one of these all-encompassing statements. The recruiter's been in business long enough to know that while you may be a great marketer in your industry or within specific product lines, the likelihood of you being able to market almost anything is probably a likelihood that's false. So instead, focus on specifics. Focus on what that particular prospective company does and show the recruiter, connect the dots for them, how your skills can help them achieve the goals that they need accomplished by making this hire or the problems that they need fixed by making this hire? Another example, does the company sell software services? Then instead of saying you can sell anything and you have these great selling skills that you can sell anything, change your answer to something to the effect of, I'm great at creating and executing marketing campaigns for software, and show then specifically how you've done that. Whether it's transferable skills that maybe you sold something else prior that would lend itself to selling software just as readily, or you've been in software sales for a number of years and you have examples to show from your work history. So show that those work history examples that tell the story as opposed to you just simply stating that you have the trait. Third, and it's more along the same lines of what we just talked about, but more specific, you want to answer with professional examples. So this can be the biggest landmine area of an interview. If you respond to the tell me about yourself question with ramblings about your personal life and, born in X year and X place, and this is what your childhood was like, and you're starting from there and you're going on and on and on and on, you've pretty much completely missed the point of the question. So while you want to weave in some personal traits and some personal motivations behind what brings you to be the profession that you are today, you need to make sure you stick to the point of the meeting, which is an interview. The interviewer wants to know is who you are professionally. So, for example, are you a financial expert that's looking to fill a chief financial officer position? Have your stories revolve around how you've made it to now being at this level that qualifies you for this position, and what specifically makes you qualified for the position. Tell your story about yourself that weaves in how you're qualified for the role. This is the interviewer's way of opening the line of communication and still getting what they need relatively quickly without them having to ask a lot of questions. You need to be prepared with stories. They want to know off the bat if your leadership skills are right for the job. Are you going to be able to attract the right talent to grow the group? How do you interface with other executives around the boardroom table? Do you liaise effectively with non-financial leaders, marketing and legal and other areas? You want to show these stories and how you've evolved over time. Initially, when answering this question, I try to stay away from the personal stuff. It doesn't mean you won't weave it in later on into the story or that personal traits aren't worthy. But you just want to make sure that you stick to the initial points of the meeting, especially if this tell me about yourself question is asked early in the interview. Early in the interview and at the very beginning of answering this question, I find that the personal traits maybe aren't the right time to bring it up, but eventually you will, and you'll know when to do it, and you'll do it in the appropriate context. And lastly, keep the answer sweet, short, and to the point. This is a common interview question, so it can seem informal. It allows the candidate to maybe let their guard down when answering it, and it can be a landmine where it leads you to ramble or present too much personal information that didn't need to be said. You want to make sure you're mindful of your answer being short, sweet, and to the point. Think of it this way. Think of this question as the opportunity for a sales pitch. A soft sales pitch, but a sales pitch. What makes an effective sales pitch? It's short, it's sweet, it's simple, it's to the point, and it meets the need of the person who is hearing the information and who's interviewing you for the position. So by being short, sweet, and to the point, you can avoid this landmine. Form a short narrative around these key points that differentiate you from other candidates. Write it out. Practice it. This way, you're not caught off guard. You get a vibe of how long it takes to say these specific stories, so you can tell if you're going on and on and on because you practiced them. So having this stage down will dramatically increase your confidence on an interview. Knowing you can be conversational in your answer when asked this tell me about yourself question is huge because they're going to ask. You need to be ready. So instead of hoping they don't ask, but they ask, and then you're scrambling and awkward and weird, now you can say, like, bring it on. I'm so glad you asked me that question. And you have an answer, and you can say it naturally and confidently with your shoulders back, eye contact in place, and it will set a great first impression. So if you found this helpful and you want more interview prep resources, go to our interview prep sheet. You can find it at interviewprepsheet.com. You can download the interview prep sheet there. You will ensure that you'll have all your bases covered when you're going on your next interview, and you're going to do exceptionally well by using this checklist. So We have additional interview tactics and strategies for you that will help you nail the interview or even your next performance review. Because frankly, I believe performance reviews are really like internal interviews. You're showing why you were worthy of keeping your job and why you're worthy of even positioning yourself for next promotion based on all of these stories of your achievements that you're able to tell. So go to interviewprepsheet.com, get the interview prep sheet. In past episodes, we've talked about the only way to truly protect yourself from job loss is to pretend you're fired today, make a list of activities that you would do to start finding your next job and do it now. Doing these proactive activities to keep yourself in demand when you don't need a job, this is the key element in the Pretend You're Fired Today action list. Keep your network primed, keep your network active so you stay in the forefront of your network's mind and you're creating demand for yourself consistently and before you need it. That's the key. This way, if your job situation changes unexpectedly, you already have pent-up demand for what you do. You just need to make some phone calls. You need to put out some feelers, and that will allow you to find the job a lot faster because you've done these actions that I'm showing you here today and in past episodes. For the next few episodes of this Pretend You're Fired Today podcast, we're going to continue to go through a list of tactics and activities for you to do now, as if you were let go today. So this way you're always ready for whatever the world brings your way. The first item on our Pretend You're Fired Today podcast list was your resume. You want to make sure you get that ready. We cover that in episodes 1 through 8. And the second item on the Pretend You're Fired Today action list was updating your LinkedIn profile. And you can go back to episodes 9 through 12 and you'll be able to review how to set up your profile. In the last few episodes, we've covered a ton of different topics in job search and interview prep. And some of the topics we covered were how to work with recruiters, how to make job boards work for you. We've discussed how to create stories and achievement-based bullets for your resume and the stories, obviously, for interviewing. This way, you're able to crush the interview, get an offer, and put that offer on your terms. I have to tell you, I'm so proud of you of taking these steps, making yourself marketable, creating the demand before you need it. Most people don't do this. You're really setting yourself apart by doing this. Most people wait because they put their head in the sand. They think job loss or unexpected job changes won't happen to them. But boom, bam, then it happens. Unexpected job changes happen, and then people are trying to learn all this information, and they're scrambling. They're under pressure. It's really uncomfortable when you're trying to learn all this stuff because you have to, as opposed to now, you're doing it because you want to. And it's so much better. So just kudos to you for giving this gift to yourself of learning it before you need it. My friend saved me with her priceless advice of pretend you're fired today, and I'm paying it forward with you. And I ask you to pay this sentiment forward, share it with as many executives, rising professionals who you feel would benefit from this build it before you need it advice. It's just so key. To me, it's really the only aspect of job security that truly exists. It's just literally pretending you're fired today and just making sure you have some inroads always in the works. Doing the preparation suggested in this episode will prepare you to interview confidently, whether you're on a job for a performance interview or you're going to be interviewing for your next role. In our next episode, you're going to want to be here for this one. We will discuss how to answer that ever popular "Are you overqualified for this job?" question. I know most candidates really hate that question. So the topic in the next episode will be how to handle the overqualified question so you can move past it and get on to the next interview. I'm going to show you how to answer this question effectively and eloquently to keep you moving through the process. So tune in for the next episode. Don't miss it. Until then, go to interviewprepsheet.com, download our interview prep sheet, be ready for the next session, reinforce what you learned today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Be well.
This is the podcastfactory.com.